You're watching BBC News. Welcome to our viewers in the United Kingdom. I'm Laura Trevelyan in New York, and the breaking news here from the United States is that the United States Supreme Court has overturned Roe v Wade, the landmark ruling which guaranteed a woman's federal right to an abortion. Now it's being returned to the states. So a woman's access to abortion in America will now depend on where she lives in this country. Let's go now to our correspondent Nomia Iqbal, who is outside the Supreme Court. And Nomia, tell us more about the actual judgment from the justices.
Yes, Laura, this is a seminal moment in America when it comes to women's rights. But many Americans knew that this was going to happen ever since this draft opinion was leaked back in early May last month, which showed the intention of the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v Wade. And since then, we've seen huge security outside the Supreme Court. So just when you walk towards the Supreme Court, you can't get anywhere near. There are black fences all the way around. The exit and entrance points are marked by police. At the moment, they're trying to keep separate the two groups of protesters that have been coming here nearly every day in anticipation of that ruling. You've got the anti-abortion groups who were really hopeful that the justices would stick to that draft opinion, which they have. And then you have the pro-choice groups who are hoping that by protesting, they would be able to change the justices' minds, that they would somehow be able to change course. But they haven't. The draft opinion is that was leaked in May. The opinion that we've got today, the official ruling, is very similar to that draft opinion, which has decided that Roe v Wade is not constitutional. And in the ruling, it says that the majority opinion, in a ruling of 6-3, 6 conservative justices, 3 liberals, the majority opinion cites that the right is not deeply rooted in the nation's history. Pro-abortion rights protesters are saying women are not property of the state, women refuse to go back, and this court is illegitimate. But obviously we are going to be talking about how we got here, what this means, but of course it's really important to keep emphasising what this doesn't mean. This does not mean that abortion is now going to become illegal across America. Roe v Wade was all about changing the way states regulated abortion. So when that 73 ruling came in, before then, states largely had banned abortion, they had different views on abortion, but 73 ruling, which was a result of a lawsuit brought by a young woman in Texas who wants an abortion, established this sort of a federal guidance, the kind of baseline which said that women had a constitutional right to have an abortion up to 24 weeks, that it established the right to privacy. Now, over the decades, Roe v Wade obviously has been hugely challenged. It's never been left alone by anti-abortion activists, and they've chipped away at it, and there are aspects of the ruling that have been subjected to more regulation, particularly in the second and third trimesters, and that has enabled states to really move forward to restrict abortion even further. So there are already parts of America, we know, where it's really, really hard to get an abortion, but it's never been banned. States have never been able to ban abortion outright because of this constitutional ruling. However, this opinion that has come down now by the Supreme Court gets rid of that baseline, that federal guidance, and has basically said to the 50 states of America, it's up to you, you now decide. So what we're going to see are the 50 states of America almost in 3 categories: those that will ban abortion, those that will protect abortion rights, and those that will be somewhere in between, which will restrict abortion but not ban it outright. So you're going to get this cascade of laws, this sort of patchwork of laws, and it all depends where you live. And pro-rights groups say that about 40 million women live in these hostile states. It's going to become much harder for them to access abortion services, whether that's the operation, the procedure, or the medicated abortion, which involves taking 2 pills, which is the most prevalent common form of abortion that's taken in this country. And I think what we're going to see happen in America is you're going to see these political battles that will play out across the country, the likes of which the country really hasn't seen since the days of slavery, where you had 2 camps that seemingly could not see eye to eye. But what this now means is that right that women have had for nearly half a century has now gone. We don't exactly know when the ruling will come in, but we know that there are about 26 states that will move in the end to ban abortion, which is nearly half the country.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who is a leading advocate for a women's right to choose on the Democratic side, she's called this a devastating day for all Americans. And it's interesting, Nomi, that the Chief Justice, John Roberts, voted with majority, but he said he would have taken a more measured course, stopping short of overruling Roe outright. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, we've yet to read in more detail exactly what the senior justice, the Chief Justice there, John Roberts, has decided. It's worth remembering that John Roberts doesn't really consider himself as a conservative judge. He's a centrist, he is an institutionalist. And in the past, when there have been attempts to overturn Roe v Wade, he has sided with the Liberals because he believes in the precedent that was set by the Supreme Court in 1973. He's also a huge sort of target for a lot of conservatives who are quite critical about the fact that he isn't the conservative justice that they want him to be. But, you know, there were, in anticipation of this ruling, there was some suggestion that maybe Mr. Roberts could try and convince the justices on the bench, the Conservative majority. We've got a strong Conservative majority now to perhaps have some sort of compromise at some point. But it's also worth remembering that the three justices, the Conservative justices that are on the bench, Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Amy Coney Barrett, were put there by Donald Trump. And Donald Trump had said when he was president that he would only put justices on the bench who were anti-abortion. And so I think it's probably fair to say in many ways that the fall of Roe v Wade is very much part of Donald Trump's legacy.
Nomia, is this ruling going to test the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, given that opinion polling does suggest that a large majority of Americans support a woman's legal right to an abortion?
It'll be interesting to see because, yes, the polling and even recent polling has shown that most Americans, around about 66%, think that Roe v Wade should be upheld, that Roe v Wade should be allowed in all cases or almost all cases. But it's interesting because there are other surveys and other polls that come out that suggest that it's not as black and white as that there is some nuance there, that when you ask people, certainly when I've done it anecdotally, when I've been traveling around parts of America, you know, the reason why they think women should be allowed an abortion, it changes. So most people would say that if it puts the woman's health at risk, or if her pregnancy is a result of sexual abuse, then she has a right to a termination. But if it comes to issues like marital status or poverty or that kind of issue, then that is something that they are slightly, the sort of support slightly reduces on that. But I actually think that moving forward, national polling is not really going to matter as much anymore. I think what we're going to see now is polls at state level will matter the most, because abortion is now, the issue of abortion laws is something that's going to be a war of geography, really, and it will be something that will play out at state level moving forward.
It certainly will. And let's just take a look at that seismic ruling by the United States Supreme Court, which has just landed in the last few minutes. So the Supreme Court has ruled to overturn Roe versus Wade, which is almost 50 years old, that ruling. And the justices found essentially that ruling, they found it to be unconstitutional. And they have declared that now the decision as to whether or not a woman may have an abortion is one that is being returned to the states. And it's fascinating, isn't it, Nomia, because all of these new justices on the courts, Amy Coney Barrett, Neil Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, during their confirmation hearings, they were asked about Roe versus Wade. They were asked whether it was what's called a super precedent, because it's, you know, a ruling that's lasted for almost 50 years. And they all were very careful to dodge that answer, weren't they? What they would do on Roe versus Wade. But now we have the answer.
I don't think that's hugely surprising, though. I think whenever you look at these confirmation hearings, justices are always a little bit vague about what they believe. And you know, there are senators that have expressed disdain about the fact that, exactly what you said, that that during their hearings they didn't say either way. But I think the fact that they were vague is like I say, quite typical of Supreme Court justices when they are going through their hearings.
And Nomia, let's just talk about the practical impact of this. If you're a woman who lives in the Deep South, in Alabama or Mississippi, what is going to be the nearest state to you where you can get an abortion? Are you going to have to drive 1,000 miles to get one?
Well, if you live in any one of those states, obviously you can't get an abortion there. You can't get in your car and drive over the border to any of your neighbouring states, such as Kentucky, Tennessee, or anywhere in the South, because they've banned abortion. So you live in a hostile state, the state that's hostile to abortion, you are surrounded by states that are hostile to abortion. So really, you're going to have to get into your car and travel more than 50 miles away to a state that permits it. Perhaps Illinois. Illinois is a state in the Midwest that is committed to abortion rights, and Illinois has said that it's going to expand abortion rights, and it's also said that it expects to get an influx of up to 14,000 to 15,000 extra women per year wanting to use their services. But that's presuming you've got the money to go and do that. If you are a woman who is poor, and this is what pro-choice groups are saying, is that you're not likely to do that. And they say that this ruling will affect poor women, specifically African American women and Hispanic women as well. They won't be able to drive to another state or even fly to another state. And there are surveys that suggest that if a woman has to drive more than 50 miles to a clinic near her, she is twice as likely to either rethink getting an abortion, or she is likely to abandon the idea altogether and force herself into parenthood.
March for Life, an anti-abortion group, has said that this decision means that equality begins in the womb. Are there fears, though, Nomia, that this could really just mean a return to those days of the backstreet abortions of 50 years ago, when women who didn't have access to an abortion actually sometimes found that their lives were in jeopardy as they tried to get rid of unwanted children?
Those are the fears that pro-choice groups have, that you've got women who live in these states that will be hostile to abortion, can't do anything about it. They don't have the money, they don't have the support to do it. And there are so many questions about what is possible for them. So something worth remembering is that one of the most common forms of abortion is medicated abortion. This involves 2 pills to end your pregnancy, and this happens in the first 10 weeks of pregnancy, which is when the majority of women do get an abortion. So what you have to do with the first pill, however, is you need to get permission to get that pill. So you need to have an appointment with your doctor. You need to go physically in person and pick it up. Now, that rule was relaxed during the pandemic because obviously people didn't want to go out and catch the virus, and so you could phone your doctor in something that's called telemedicine and get that pill sent out to you. But what if you live in Texas? Texas is one of those states that is a trigger law state, which means once Roe V Wade is overturned, it will automatically ban abortion. Will you be able to ring a doctor? Will they have to send the pill to you? Will someone check your mail? Will you have to get in the car and go to another state, stay in a hotel and ring your doctor and they send the pill to you there? Or these are the challenges, the huge challenges that women are now facing in terms of what to do. And there are no readily available answers. So the fear is by pro-choice groups that women might be resorted to drastic actions in order to end their pregnancies.
And Nomia, President Barack Obama has just tweeted, today the Supreme Court not only reversed nearly 50 years of precedent, it relegated the most intensely personal decision someone can make to the whims of politicians and ideologues, attacking the essential freedoms of millions of Americans. This is going to be a hugely animating issue, isn't it, come the midterm elections here in the United States in November?
It certainly seems to be, as far as President Biden is concerned. So I'm not sure if he's released a statement yet about it, but we know that he has talked about Roe v Wade being overturned because that was the anticipation that that was going to happen. And just recently, he gave an interview to a late-night talk show host, and in it, he said that this was going to create, and I'll quote it, a mini revolution. He said this could propel many Republicans out of office come the midterm elections. So he clearly sees it as an issue that voters might take to the polls. And when the draft was leaked in May, I had gone to report on a pro-choice rally that was happening in Florida, and I spoke to a lawmaker there who is running in the Florida governorship. And she said to me, her name's Nikki Fried, she said to me that abortion was going to absolutely be the #1 issue that she was going to present to the voters come the midterms, that she is going to fight to keep abortion rights. Florida next month is going to ban abortion at 15 weeks. We don't know if they will go all the way yet. That remains to be seen, and ban it outright. But I think if we go by what President Biden has said previously, that that is very likely that this will be an issue that will come up hugely in the midterm elections in November.
And Normia, the former Vice President Mike Pence has just tweeted today, "Life won," and he has commended the Conservative justices for what he called their courage. And it's important to note, isn't it, that this project of overturning Roe versus Wade has been one that has been 50 years in the making, and the importance of conservative judicial appointments to the Republican Party is something that's been prioritised, hasn't it? With President Trump appointing 3 conservative justices to the court, and now you see the results.
The conservative movement has been waiting for this moment for a long, long time, as you say. When that ruling came in 1973, there were many states that weren't happy about it. They already have these pre-Roe v Wade laws on their books, just sort of waiting there to be made constitutional if in the future event Roe v Wade was ever overturned. And as I mentioned earlier, the ruling has never had any peace in this country. Since 1973, it's been chipped away at so much by anti-abortion activists. There was a case in 1992, Casey versus Planned Parenthood, which saw more regulation introduced, which allowed states to really restrict abortion. And we've just seen in the last year or so states bringing in rules which basically bypass state laws and which involve citizens, trying to stop people from having an abortion, empowering citizens to report anyone that wants an abortion. But this moment is a huge victory for Conservatives. Of course, this is a loss for those who are pro-choice. And as I said, I'll just repeat that quote that came down from pro-abortion rights. They said, "Women are not property of the state. Women refuse to go back, and this court is illegitimate." It remains to be seen what President Biden will actually do. He has talked about some executive action. I just also want to read to you the Liberal dissent opinion. So there were 3 justices on the bench who dissented, the Liberal justices, and they have said, as of today, this court holds a state can always force a woman to give birth, prohibiting even the earliest abortions. A state can thus transform what, when freely undertaken, is a wonder into what, when forced, may be a nightmare. So that's from the Liberal justices on the bench.
And Nomia, the Attorney General of Missouri, the New York Times is reporting, has already issued an opinion that activates Missouri's trigger law, effectively ending abortion in the state. So Missouri now becomes the first state in the nation to effectively outlaw abortion following the Supreme Court's decision. And more states will follow, won't they, Nomia? How many states do we expect will now, in effect, outlaw abortion after this ruling?
It's thought that there will be about 13 states that have these so-called trigger laws where they will now move to completely ban abortion. And these are states that are largely in the Deep South, so think Texas, Alabama, you've got Kentucky, you've got Mississippi, of course, where the case originated from, the case that has now toppled Roe v Wade. There are also some in the Midwest like Missouri, Wyoming, also in the plains of America such as Idaho as well. So yes, we are going to see more of that. I wanted to just make a point about Missouri as well. And this is the thing that many pro-choice groups are worried about. So they don't think that overturning Roe v Wade is the end game. They think that the final frontier is to ban abortion outright in this country, to make it either ban it outright or make it really difficult. So earlier this year, Missouri weighed some legislation which would basically allow individuals to sue anybody that was crossing state lines to go to another state to try and get an abortion. That law was blocked in the state's legislature, but given now that Roe V Wade has been overturned and they have moved to ban abortion outright, it is very, very likely that that particular law, that particular suggestion might crop up again.
And Nomia, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, he said in a statement that millions of Americans have spent half a century praying, marching and working towards today's historic victories for the rule of law and for innocent life. And Mitch McConnell is someone who, when he was Majority Leader of the Senate, he really made this conservative-dominated court happen, didn't he? Because he shepherded through the nomination of President Trump's 3 conservative justices who have been pivotal in making this ruling.
He did, and that caused much anger amongst the Democratic Party, because if you remember when the then President Obama wanted to put through Merrick Garland, who is now President Biden's Attorney General, it was blocked by Mitch McConnell, who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, on the basis that it was too close to the election. And of course, Amy Coney Barrett, one of the justices who has backed Roe v. Wade being overturned, was put on the bench very, very close to the election in 2020. But yes, as I mentioned before, for Donald Trump, this is a huge win for him. He's not president right now, but it's part of his legacy. He got the opportunity to put 3 justices on the bench in one term. It's a pretty extraordinary opportunity for him. And you could argue that who the president puts on the Supreme Court is probably one of the most important decisions they'll ever make, because the justices on the bench have life-term appointments. You've got justices on the bench who were appointed by Reagan, by George W. Bush. They can leave whenever they want, they can retire whenever they want. But the opinions that they have, the decisions they make, will last for generations, as we're now going to see, and they outlast the president who put them on the bench. And just to let you know, Laura, we have just got reaction from the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a member of the Democratic Party, and she has condemned, she's called it cruel, the cruel Supreme Court ruling. She says women's rights are on the ballot in November. So that's answering what we were talking about before about how much will this play in the midterm elections. So as far as Nancy Pelosi is concerned, women's rights are on the ballot come November.
We're also seeing developments already, Nomia, with companies in states where abortion is about to be illegal, saying that they will pay travel abortion expenses for women who want to seek an abortion but cannot get one in the state where they live and work. So it's going to be quite extraordinary, isn't it, the impact of this ruling? And it's going to be even more divisive, isn't it, with corporations being drawn into the fray?
It is, and it's going to be fascinating to see how that works. So already in Illinois, the state has said that private employers will guarantee you can access abortion. But what if you live in Texas? Your employer can't do that because it will go against the state law, or any of the other states that will ban abortion. What if there is a big company that has a branch in Texas, has a branch in Illinois, will be able to guarantee that you can access abortion but can't do it in another state? That's the problem. It's this patchwork, isn't it, of laws, this cascade of laws that is just going to cause such confusion and prompt so many questions. But as I say, there are just no answers yet on what happens next.
And for President Biden, what can he actually do? He was asked by reporters earlier in the week, what are you going to do if, as expected, the court overturns Roe versus Wade? And he said, well, we're looking at some executive actions. But really, what can he do, Nomia?
Well, it's interesting because late last year, the Democratic Party did pass a House bill which would basically protect abortion rights across America. But of course, it went nowhere in the Senate because they don't have the numbers to make it law. So Congress obviously has the ability to make laws for the whole of the country, but I think when it comes to abortion rights, that is not an option for the Democratic Party. As you mentioned there, President Biden has talked about executive actions. There is some suggestion that they could make it easier for a woman to travel to another state to receive abortion. How that will work, not sure exactly. They could also expand access to medicated abortion via the mail, as I was mentioning before. There are some advocates that suggest leasing federal land so that abortion clinics can operate on federal land, which would bypass state laws. But this is incredibly complicated, quite convoluted, not quite sure how that will work. So he and his press secretary have said in recent weeks that they will look to try and put forward some action that will help women, but we haven't received any details of that yet.
And I guess the Nomir there, thank you so much for all of that reaction. Nomir there on Capitol Hill.